Regardless of what you may or may not believe, addiction is not a disease. And telling people that they have a disease and they are forever fucked is what causes people to literally off themselves. If you don't recognize my face, my name is Cody. I'm a recovery specialist, public speaker, and thought leader in the space of addiction and recovery. I've even written a book. I'm an international best-selling author. This is my forte. Over the last 5 years, I've personally worked with hundreds of people, thousands of people who were convinced at one point or another that they have the disease of alcoholism. And no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, how little they drink, or how much time they spend away from the poison, they are always going to be an alcoholic. They will always be addicted. But you know what? None of that is true. It's not based in science. It is not accurate. It is old AA rhetoric that literally gets people to feel so horrible, so miserable, so low, activates so much guilt, so much shame that they just have one more drink. Now, addiction itself is not a disease. It's treated like one. But you want to know what a real disease is? That fucking mindset. The mindset that you are forever fucked is the disease. You know we don't treat trauma with labels, right? We treat it with truth. So here's some fucking truth. I'm an ex-alcoholic. I drank alcohol for 24 years, 16 at high risk, and 2.5 years I had a physical addiction to having over 30 shots of straight vodka every single day. And even though my heart stopped and my liver failed, and I spent 18 months recovering, I was also convinced at one point that I was never going to get better, that I am supposed to be an alcoholic, that I will always struggle with addiction. I will always want alcohol. Alcohol will always be the cornerstone of my desires. But I was fucking wrong. After putting more time into my food, into my sleep, into my water, into my rest, into fitness, into nutrition, I realized that I don't have a single craving. I'm not just alive, I actually feel alive. I realized that I wasn't out here managing symptoms. I wasn't out here trying to stay away from the alcohol. I wasn't not going out to the bar. I wasn't not going out to events. I wasn't not cooking with alcohol. I literally forgot that I ever even had a problem. You know what it really was? It wasn't the alcohol that was killing me, maybe physically. It was the belief that I would never be free, that I would never be a regular person, that I would never have a life worth living. And if you're anything like me, that's definitely worth one more drink. And you know you don't relapse because you're sick, right? You relapse because you're unseen, unheard, unrecognized. You're numb to all the things that make you feel alive. I'll be on stages in Italy teaching an addiction workshop about what I'm about to say. You know, the brain is neuroplastic, right? You've heard the word neuroplasticity. When you challenge the brain enough, when it goes through enough strategic challenges, it is forced to adapt. It is forced to rewire to its new stimuli. That's why you have that habit. That's why you think that thought. That's why you feel that feeling. That's why you do what you do. Your brain has literally wired itself because it doesn't know any better. You've been fueling it with alcohol, with poison, with substances, with drugs, with food, with sugars. Your brain goes, I guess this is what life is. So I need to make sure that I have the appropriate neurological mechanisms to handle what life is. That's another way of saying, if you accidentally became someone that developed an addiction based on your circumstances and environments, then doesn't that mean with enough work, your brain is going to adapt to a healthy lifestyle, healthy conditions, positive thoughts, maybe some affirmations? Don't you think your brain's going to do what it's always done your entire life and break any neurological patterns that do not relate to your preferred lifestyle? When you're addicted to something, your brain is wired for survival. So do you think your brain's going to operate the same when you're actually thriving in life? People don't need a pill for a disease they don't have. People don't need to be told that they are forever fucked. People need a pathway back to who they know they are, beneath the pain, beneath the circumstances, beneath the neurological environment that makes them feel like they're not good enough. And the trippy part is I've helped over 15,000 people unwire their brain from addiction, all without labeling themselves an alcoholic, an addict, or forever fucked. Definitely didn't call themselves diseased. It's important to remember that sobriety isn't about quitting drinking or quitting a substance. It's about rewiring your reality. Who are you really? And are you acting in accordance with your truest self? If you don't think you're worth it, that's not you talking. That's the substance and everyone else that thinks you ain't worth shit. But that's not true. Addiction is not a disease. It is a response to disconnection. Isn't it a coincidence that the opposite of addiction is connection? And those that feel connected to themselves, the universe, or their surroundings are far less likely to damage that specific lifestyle they've chosen to live? Do you really think the 3.5 million people people that lose their lives to alcohol and substance abuse felt that they actually had a purpose when they passed on? No, they didn't. And if they did, it was an illusion provided by the substance. You weren't born broken, dude. You were designed to cope with your environment. Had you had a healthier environment, you were raised in a healthier lifestyle, you would have never, regardless of genetic predisposition, picked up the habits or the behaviors of alcoholics or people that identify as addicts. If you don't act like one, you won't become one. Nobody stays sick when they start to feel safe, when they start to feel recognized, when their body and brain start to actually come online, when they start to feel alive. They don't operate under the illusion of forever fucked. Sick, diseased. We cure this disease literally every single day. The real illness is in the belief that you're never going to get better, that you are going to be sick. You were destined to be sick and you will always be sick, but you know that's not true. So if you've been struggling with substances, alcohol specifically, dude, you are not diseased. I would never treat you with a mask on. I would never connect with you in a way that makes it seem like I may catch what you have. I don't know if you knew this, but you know they only treat alcoholism and substance abuse like a disease for insurance purposes? I'm not sure if anybody ever told you this, but you can outgrow this identity. The longer you pretend and the longer you commit to the fact that you have a disease, and the longer that you commit to the label that you're an alcoholic, that you're an addict, that you are forever fucked, you're always going to act in accordance with that label. That label is your limitation. So if you want the cure, dude, start playing. Go outside. Take care of yourself. I've worked with countless people, and not a single person still feels sick and still struggles in the same way now that they have a brain and body that they actually enjoy. Have you ever actually been happy? If the only time that you've ever said that this is the best day of my life was when you were blacked out, drunk, faded, and could barely remember anything, the peak of that day is your worst day happy. So if you're done labeling yourself, you're over hearing this old school AA rhetoric that you are forever fucked and you will never amount to anything bigger than the disease that you've acquired through survival, then you know where to find me.